Here's a question that sounds like a death sentence the moment you hear it. Could you survive a medieval winter without fire, no hearth, no candle flame, no comforting glow cutting through the dark, just cold stone wind and your own body heat? And yet the unsettling truth is that thousands of people once did, not by choice but by circumstance. Imagine a winter night stretching 14 hours long, snow-ceiling doors shut, forests stripped bare of fuel, and a family sitting in darkness, listening to the house creak as temperatures fall, knowing that fire, humanity's oldest ally, might not return for weeks. And this isn't a thought experiment. It happened during sieges, famines, forced migrations, and fuel shortages. And as we step into this frozen reality, we'll discover that survival without fire wasn't about toughness or luck. It was about a different understanding of warmth, one so foreign to us today that it almost feels like a lost language. To understand how fireless survival was even possible, you have to understand how medieval people experienced winter. Because for them, cold wasn't an interruption of life. It was a condition of it. Forests were not infinite. Wood could be exhausted by overuse, blocked by snow, or controlled by lords. And during long winters, especially in northern Europe or during times of war, firewood became scarce or unreachable. Monasteries recorded winters when flames were rationed. Villages endured sieges, where smoke would give away their position, and peasants survived fuel shortages after bad harvests. And in these moments, people didn't panic and freeze immediately. They shifted into survival mode, relying on architecture, clothing, diet, and human behavior refined over generations. And what's striking is that these methods weren't celebrated. They were invisible, used quietly, then forgotten once fire returned, which is why history rarely tells their story directly. Now, here's where the ingenuity emerges, because surviving without fire meant eliminating heat loss rather than producing heat. Imagine sealing yourself into the smallest possible space, one room, sometimes even a bed enclosure. Medieval box beds built into walls or surrounded by wooden panels that trapped body heat like a cocoon, layered with wool, fur and straw mattresses that insulated from frozen floors. And clothing wasn't removed at night. It was carefully rearranged, dry layers kept close, damp ones banished because moisture was the real killer and food played a role too. High-fat diets in winter, cheese, preserved meats, oils, fed internal heat production, while communal living multiplied warmth. Bodies packed together during sleep, sharing heat deliberately. And even breathing mattered. Slow, controlled respiration under heavy covers reduced moisture loss. And when you imagine all this together, you realize fire wasn't the only heat source. The human body was, and medieval people learned, painfully, how to protect it from the cold's relentless theft. And this is where the past suddenly feels uncomfortably relevant, because modern survival planning often assumes access to fuel, power or heat sources, yet extreme storms, grid failures and fuel shortages can remove those instantly. And medieval fireless survival teaches us a different mindset, one focused on insulation over heating, zoning space instead of warming entire buildings, using bedding, clothing and human presence strategically. Imagine applying this during a winter blackout by sealing one room, insulating floors, wearing dry wool layers, eating calorie-dense food and sleeping close together instead of pacing cold hallways. And while we'd never choose to live this way permanently, understanding it could mean the difference between panic and endurance when modern systems fail. So, could you survive a medieval winter without fire? The honest answer is yes, but only if you abandon modern assumptions about comfort and embrace a colder, quieter form of resilience, one that treats warmth as something to guard fiercely rather than generate endlessly. And these forgotten survival strategies remind us that humanity endured centuries of winter not because it conquered nature, but because it adapted to it with humility and discipline. And as we face a future shaped by climate extremes and fragile infrastructure, these silent lessons from fireless winters feel less like history and more like preparation. And if this journey into the cold changed how you think about warmth, survival, or the simple act of staying alive, consider sharing it, subscribing, or continuing to explore how the past still whispers instructions for the future.